Single dad got rejected, grabbed his daughter's hand and left. Then the CEO sprinted through the rain to stop him. He didn't beg. He didn't argue. He didn't make a scene. He just took his little girl's hand, walked through those glass doors, and disappeared into the rain. And that single, quiet moment, that one decision, to walk away with dignity, changed the entire course of his life. It was a Tuesday morning in Chicago, and the sky had been crying since before dawn. Marcus Webb, 34, hadn't slept more than 3 hours, not because his alarm failed him, but because his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, had woken up screaming from a nightmare around midnight, the kind that made her cry out for her mom. And when she called for her mom, Marcus felt it in his chest like a fist closing around his heart, because her mom wasn't coming. Her mom had been gone for 2 years now. He held Lily until she fell back asleep, tucked her blanket under her chin, and then lay in the dark, staring at the water stain on the ceiling of their one-bedroom apartment on Chicago's South Side. He didn't go back to sleep. Instead, he lay there running numbers in his head. The rent, 3 weeks late, with a politely worded but very serious note, slipped under his door by the building manager, the truck making a grinding sound every time he braked, which meant the pads were basically gone, which meant he was driving a hazard, the electricity bill sitting unopened on the kitchen counter, because he already knew what it said and wasn't ready to deal with it yet. And then, in exactly 4 hours and 32 minutes, the most important job interview of his life. He got up at 5 a.m. He made Lily's breakfast, scrambled eggs with a mountain of cheese, slightly crispy on the bottom, exactly how she liked them. He packed her little backpack with her coloring book and her favorite, stuffed rabbit named Captain. He wrote her a note and tucked it inside the front pocket. The way he always did, 3 words. Same as always, you are enough. He dropped her off at Mrs. Kowalski's apartment down the hall. Mrs. Kowalski was 71 years old, made the best pierogi in the city, and treated Lily like a granddaughter. She opened the door in her robe, took one look at Marcus in his ironed shirt, and said, "Go get it, son." He took the bus downtown. He couldn't afford parking. He couldn't afford a lot of things lately, but he had ironed that shirt the night before, twice, because it was the only dress shirt he owned, and he needed it to be perfect. Vantage Group occupied floors 10 through 16 of a glass tower on Michigan Avenue. It was one of the fastest growing tech investment firms in the Midwest, the kind of company that got written up in Forbes, that had its logo on the side of startup events, that paid its senior staff the kind of salaries that turned lives around. The job posting was for a senior operations manager. The salary listed was $115,000 per year plus benefits. Marcus had read that number so many times over the past 3 weeks that it had taken on an almost mythical quality in his mind. On $15,000, it would mean a real apartment, 2 bedrooms, so Lily could have her own space, her own little room that she could decorate however she wanted. It would mean the truck fixed, the bills paid, a savings account with an actual positive balance. It would mean breathing room. For the first time in 2 years, actual breathing room. He walked through the revolving glass door, shook the rain off his jacket, and approached the front desk. The receptionist gave him a practiced smile. "Mr. Webb, please have a seat. Someone will be right with you." He sat and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. He watched other people come and go. Through the lobby, men and women in tailored suits, carrying expensive bags, moving with the casual confidence of people who had never had to check their bank account before buying coffee. He sat with his hands folded in his lap and his back straight and his face calm. 40 minutes after his scheduled interview time, a woman in a sharp gray blazer finally appeared. "Mr. Webb, I'm sorry for the delay. I'm the director of HR, please follow me." The conference room on the 14th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the rain-soaked city. There were 3 people seated across the table. A woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, a younger man with a tablet, and in the center, a man in his mid-40s with the kind of confident posture that said, "I make decisions and people accept them." His name tag read Derek Callahan, VP of Talent Acquisition. None of them smiled. The interview began. And for the first 10 minutes it went well. Marcus talked about his background with quiet confidence. 10 years in logistics and operations management, building supply chain systems from the ground up, leading cross-functional teams through high-pressure restructures. He talked about the time he had taken a failing distribution operation and turned its delivery accuracy from 67% to 94% in 8 months. He talked numbers, timelines, team sizes, outcomes. He knew his material cold. He had practiced every answer in his bathroom mirror at 5:30 in the morning for 2 weeks straight. The 3 interviewers nodded. The younger man typed notes. Derek Callahan's expression remained neutral, unreadable. Then came the question, "Mr. Webb?" Derek leaned forward slightly, lacing his fingers together on the table. "I notice there's a 2-year gap in your employment history. From early 2021 to early 2023, can you walk us through that period?" Marcus had known this was coming. He had prepared for it. He kept his voice steady. "Yes, my wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in 2020. She passed away. In March of 2021, she was 32 years old. Our daughter was 4. He paused for just a beat. "I made the decision to step back from full-time employment to be present for my daughter during that period. She had just lost her mother. She needed a parent at home, and I was going to be that parent." A silence settled over the room, not the respectful kind, not the "we understand, please continue" kind, the uncomfortable kind, the kind where people look down at their papers and shift slightly in their seats because they don't know what to do with what you just told them. Derek Callahan nodded slowly. "We appreciate your transparency," he said. "However, as I'm sure you understand, the operational landscape has evolved significantly over the past 2 years. New platforms, new frameworks, new industry standards. We do have concerns about whether a candidate with a gap of that length would be sufficiently current." Marcus kept his hands still on the table. "I understand the concern," he said calmly. "During that period, I completed certifications in 2 updated operational management frameworks. I have the documentation. I also consulted part-time remotely for 2 small businesses, one in logistics, one in retail distribution. I stayed current deliberately. I can provide references and work samples from both engagements." He looked directly at Derek Callahan when he said it. Derek looked back at him for a moment. Then he glanced at the HR director. Something passed between them, a small, almost invisible exchange that Marcus had seen before. In other rooms, in other situations. The look that meant the decision is already made. Derek stood up and extended his hand. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Webb. We'll be in touch." 12 minutes. The entire interview had lasted 12 minutes. Marcus rode the elevator down alone. He stood in the center of the elevator car, watching the floor numbers descend, 14, 13, 12. And he did the thing he had taught himself to do in hard moments. He breathed. He didn't catastrophize. He didn't rage. He just breathed and let the disappointment settle through him like cold water, because he had learned that fighting it only made it worse. By the time the doors opened at the ground floor, he had made a decision. He was going to call Mrs. Kowalski and ask her to bring Lily downtown. He wasn't going to go home alone to that apartment. Not today. Today he was going to take his daughter to get a bowl of soup somewhere warm. And he was going to watch her talk with her hands the way she always did when she was excited. And he was going to be okay. He was going to figure the next step out later. He made the call. Mrs. Kowalski said she'd bring Lily right away. "She's been asking about you all morning." That one. Marcus sat in the lobby and waited again. But this time the waiting felt different. 22 minutes later, the revolving door spun and Lily came bursting through it like a small hurricane in a green dress. Her curly hair wild from the wind. Her face split open with a grin. "Daddy!" He caught her, lifted her, held her tight. She smelled like Mrs. Kowalski's apartment, pierogies and lavender. And she immediately started telling him about the drawing she had made that morning. Something involving a purple horse and a castle and a dragon that she clarified was actually friendly. Daddy, not the scary kind. He set her down, took her hand, and they started walking toward the exit. The rain had let up slightly. He was thinking about soup. He was thinking about whether the Thai place on Wabash was too far to walk in this weather. He was thinking that maybe they would just find a diner Something simple, something warm. He was not thinking about the elevator doors behind him opening. He was not thinking about the sound of quick footsteps crossing the marble lobby floor. He was not thinking about the voice that called out, "Mr. Webb, please, wait." He turned around. A woman was walking toward him quickly, not quite running, but moving with the urgent energy of someone who was trying to catch something before it slipped away. She was in her early 40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a blazer over a black blouse. She was carrying a folder under one arm and had her other hand extended slightly, like she was signaling him to stop. She reached him slightly out of breath. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm Rachel Harmon." Marcus waited. "I'm the CEO of Vantage Group." He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay. I was observing your interview," she said. "We monitor all senior-level candidate interviews. It's a standard review process. Quality assurance." She paused. "I watched the whole thing. I heard what was said." Lily had pressed herself slightly against Marcus's leg, watching the woman with wide, curious eyes. Rachel looked down at her, and her expression, which had been urgent, almost stressed, softened completely. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Lily said seriously. "Are you my dad's boss?" Rachel looked back up at Marcus. "I'm working on it," she said quietly. They sat in a small glass-walled meeting room just off the lobby. One of Rachel's assistants appeared from somewhere with a notepad and a set of markers for Lily, who accepted them with great seriousness and immediately set to work on what she announced would be a picture of a dog, but a fancy one. Rachel set the folder on the table between them. She folded her hands. "I'm going to be direct with you," she said. "What happened upstairs was wrong. Not wrong as in against company policy, wrong as in wrong. The way that interview was conducted, the conclusions that were being drawn." She shook her head slightly. "I've been building this company for 9 years. I have worked very hard to build a culture here that understands what real-world experience looks like. And what happened in that room today was not that culture." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I appreciate you saying that. I'm not just saying it." She opened the folder. Inside was his resume, but she had been through it. There were handwritten notes in the margins, sections underlined, questions circled. "You built a complete end-to-end supply chain management system for a 200-person company," she said, "from scratch, while managing a team of 14 people and coordinating vendors across 4 states. She looked up. "And then you stopped because your wife was dying." "Yes. And then you spent 2 years as the sole parent to a grieving 4-year-old, while simultaneously maintaining your professional certifications and taking on consulting work." "Yes. And you came in here today in the rain for a job that was frankly below your experience level, and you sat in that lobby for 40 minutes, and you answered every question with complete professionalism and not a single trace of self-pity." She paused. "Am I getting the details right?" "You're getting them right." Rachel was quiet for a moment. She looked over at Lily, who was drawing with fierce concentration, her tongue slightly poking out of the corner of her mouth, the way it always did when she was focused. "My son's name is Daniel," Rachel said. "He's 15 now. When he was 3, his father and I divorced. I had just filed the paperwork to start this company. I had no investors, no office space, and no guaranteed salary. And every single person I pitched to, every single one, found a polite way to ask me whether I was really committed, whether being a single mother meant I was a risk." She said the word like it tasted bad. "I learned very quickly that the people doing the asking had never had to be truly committed to more than one thing at a time in their lives. Real commitment, the kind that cost you something. They didn't recognize it because they'd never had to practice it." She closed the folder. "The position you interviewed for today, Senior Operations Manager. I'm not going to offer you that." Marcus held very still. "I want you to consider the Vice President of Operations role instead." She slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Broader scope. Full executive team access. Direct report to me." She nodded toward the paper. "Take a look at the total compensation package." Marcus looked down. He read the number. He read it again. He set the paper down carefully and looked up at Rachel Harmon. "Why?" he asked. Not suspiciously, genuinely. Why are you doing this? She didn't hesitate. Because the most dangerous assumption a company can make is that struggle means weakness. The people who have walked through real difficulty and come out, the other side still standing, still showing up, still fighting, those are not liabilities. Those are exactly the people you want making decisions when things get hard. And things always get hard. She extended her hand across the table. So what do you say, Marcus? He didn't answer right away. He looked at Lily. She had finished her drawing and was holding it up to examine it. Head tilted to one side. It was, objectively speaking, a remarkable dog. It had 7 legs, ears that appeared to be wings, and was standing in front of what might have been a castle or might have been a very large birthday cake. She had used every single color in the set. She caught him looking and beamed at him. He thought about the rent notice under his door. He thought about the brake pads. He thought about the ironed shirt and the bus ride in the rain and the 40-minute wait and the 12-minute interview and the elevator ride down. He thought about how close he had come to just going home. He reached across the table and shook Rachel Harmon's hand. On the way out, Lily tugged on Rachel's sleeve. "Here," she said, and held out the drawing. "You can have it. It's a fancy dog. His name is Gerald." Rachel took it with both hands. Gerald the fancy dog still hangs on the wall of the Vantage Group, CEO's office on the 14th floor, right next to the company's founding documents, right next to the Forbes cover from 3 years ago. Rachel Harmon has been asked about it in every major interview she's given since. She always says the same thing. "That's the most valuable thing in this office. It reminds me every single day what real strength actually looks like and where to find it." Some doors close loudly. Some close quietly with a handshake and a "thank you, we'll be in touch." But sometimes, if you hold your daughter's hand and walk away with your dignity intact, someone comes running after you through the rain. And sometimes what they're carrying is everything you were looking for. Don't leave before they get there.